Storytime tubers, and welcome back to Let's Play Lobotomy Corporation. Face the fear, build the future, read the story. And for today's episode, for the future tubers, we're gonna specifically catch up on some codex entries, or normally they're just the stories for the abnormalities, but you can read them here. And I figured we'd start with this because it does show you how many, what percentage of the total supply of abnormalities we've seen. And I kind of thought we'd be past 45%, but it looks like on a single run through the game, if you don't do any resets, you probably hit around 50%, assuming you get to the end of the game. So it does take sort of some work to get the full 100%. But yeah, we're going to read through the ones we haven't read before, and there might be one mystery one that's in here that shouldn't be, which sounds very interesting. Anyway, we'll start from the top here. We haven't read Redultas yet, so... Oh, we also haven't read Big Bird. I'm going to do the birds all together, so we'll save those ones for the end. For reasons, we're going to review. But yeah, so Redulta. Good old Redulta. There's an old card attached to it. Merry Christmas! Santa rushes along the night sky to deliver presents to happy kids who don't cry. Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer shines a light through the night fog while tugging a sleigh full of presents. All the happy kids in the world deserve a present. Looking from afar, it resembles Santa Claus riding a sleigh, but upon closer inspection, the abnormality is totally different from the fairy tale. Contrary to popular character, the sleigh drags it. We observe the abnormality from 3 different points. The sleigh drags the reindeer, I guess? Weird. So Rudolph, a horse-like organic entity in the colors of green, red, and white. Its muscles do not seem to move, but many employees report the movement of its eyes. And some even say they've made eye contact with it. There's a hole about 30 centimeter diameter on its belly. Armed employees later reported the hole was empty. At least they have their arms, right? Santa, a mysterious transparent organic entity on top of Rudolph. It shows full of what it seems to be organs. All organs seem to be functioning normally. Sleigh. Its size is similar to that of a child. The plating looks like organic skin, and there are white blades attached to the bottom. The accessories of the sleigh are replaced by stiff, severed hands. Unknown objects are carefully wrapped into the gifts. Many employees tried to open the gifts but failed. Rumor has it the gifts can only be opened on Christmas. All 3 are crudely sewn together. Dr. Redacted suggested that all 3 may be made from a single body. Whoever made this must have had great hatred against Christmas, or never saw Santa. See, I was kind of expecting them to go like with a Krampus sort of thing, but this isn't even all that spooky. Alright, Redulta, kind of just a weird mishmash of monster. Let's see, what else was new? Dear Free Shoots, we haven't read his story yet with the cool magic bullet. The devil ultimately wanted despair. Despair wears the mind down, making one lose the will to go forward. The moment one feels there is nothing left to go forward for, the soul dies and falls down to hell, the domain of the devil. This is why the devil enjoys watching people in despair, rather than concentrating on simple work like murder. This is what we call having your soul sold to the devil. When a hunter received a gun from the devil proposed a childish contract that the last bullet would puncture the head of his beloved. The moment he heard that, he found and shot everyone he loved. Then he told the devil, "This magic bullet truly can hit anyone you say." Having his last bullets vanish, the hunter traveled to numerous worlds. Sometimes he helped those in need or fought evil, but it was all the result of an impulse, not his goodwill. Some called him a hunter of justice, while others called him the bloody marksman. One day the hunter realized the devil no longer lingered over him. He wondered why, but realized his soul had already fallen to hell. The contract had already been completed, so the devil was gone. The marksman, now a devil, continued to pull the trigger to gather the souls of others. Just like how the devil worked, the bullets will puncture anything you please. Forever. So this guy, yeah, that's an more interesting story for me. We definitely use this on the janitors a lot. But yeah, Dear Free Shoots, very, very good abnormality to have around the base. It would have been nice to have him earlier, honestly, but this is still pretty awesome. Alright, and then, let's see, before we get to the birds, we have one more, I think. So, Porcubus. Head explosion time. To be honest, daily life here is not so fun. The company says they promote healthy hobbies, but not many employees engage in that notion. Everyone has their own escape. Violence, gambling, eating. I thought I had a high level of discipline compared to the others, and it helped me to live a smoother life. Maybe that is the reason why I was assigned to Porcubus. Yes, about... I feel like this must have been his original name. Porcuvu. Maybe that's just translation. Only the employees who live the lowest of the low are assigned there. I've heard that what other employees do in the containment facility. They call it trust game. Trust game. What an elegant way to call it. Porcahoo, exactly. Omitted. Employees who were here prior gave me some precautionary tips. They told me it won't be difficult to become intimate with it. Where's Robert? But once you do, you can easily get whatever you want. They said when the right time comes, Porcubus will lean down so you can touch its thorns easily. It didn't take long until it welcomed me and allowed me to pet it. More omitted. When I first touched its thorns, I screamed because of how prickly it was. It felt like a giant needle penetrating my skin. But I wasn't actually bleeding, and the pain went away. Then there it was, the most intense happiness you've ever experienced that will make your knees wobble. Later, other employees came in to notify me that the end of my journey, I was drooling. The pleasure was so unfamiliar that I didn't go back for a while. However, it made the situation worse. You will start to have withdrawal symptoms, puking, sweating. It's different for every employee. One employee even pulled off all of their teeth because they felt like small bugs were crawling all over them. Feeling. There aren't enough words to describe it. Do you remember the happiest moment in your life? The feeling would be 1,000 times better than that. I am the last employee of Porcubus. That's understandable, seeing as how the brain demands stronger stimulation. At first, all I needed to do was lightly be stabbed by one of the thorns. Now I need to scrub myself with the thorns to get the same high. I feel like all the blood in my body will rush to my hand, eventually bursting. I've already imagined my head bursting, thousands of times or more. I gotta go now, it's time to work again. Actually, I'm drenched with sweat, did you notice? By the way, one more thing, it's not what you think. Porcubus is not aggressive. It never tried to eat us or bite our heads off. You mentioned that all the corpses were smiling happily, didn't you? That's all, it makes people smile until death. Also, good evening, David. Where was I? Smile until death. No one can be blamed. We are living in hell every day. It's just a taste of a small piece of heaven. You know what? I feel sorry for you. You've never felt these things, and you never will. But you have to interview an addicted employee like me while pretending to be decent. Now it's time for my head to burst. Good day. It's probably a trick. You know, all the abnormalities that make you feel better, in the end, they're just trying to kill you, and you do die. So even if they trick you into thinking you're enjoying it, I mean, it's probably not really for the greater good. Okay, and then that leaves the birds. We're going to start with Fiery Bird, because Fiery Bird is not one of the main trilogy, and then we'll go through the main trilogy. I might have read this guy, I forget. Long, long ago, in a forest far away, in the outside land, lived a bird. Its feather was grossly incandescent. So grossly incandescent that it could swallow the blackest darkness. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we did read this one, actually. You guys in stream probably haven't done it, but for those future tubers, you probably saw this in a different episode. Many hunters wanted its feather. It was the pride and honor. There were many rumors about the bird, such as the one where it was said that those who catch the bird will prosper through generations. Some even said one needs the feather to be a true hunter. Some said this feather is so strong that it can take the owner anywhere, like a chimera wing. Whatever it is, the bird was the symbol of adventure. The forest soon became full with people looking for the bird. There were not only hunters, but also adventurers and travelers. The once silent forest became overcrowded. People soon got bored with the rumors. They were no longer interested in the hunt. The fewer and fewer people visiting the forest, fewer and fewer people visited the forest. When the bird was finally... The bird eventually became nothing but a legend. Its eyes were blinded by severe pain. There was only a blind bird with bright feathers left in an abandoned forest. After a long time, the bird found a new forest. Many people lived there. The bird just wanted their eagerness to hunt. Something like that. Those who succeeded in the hunt are granted with the feather that countless hunters yearned. Caution is advised when hunting season for fiery bird comes. Rash actions such as suppressing it are not recommended. It is also not recommended to hunt the bird to prove one's bravery. Remember those hunters who had to return with empty hands. Every employee thinks, I can catch it just a little bit more. It takes courage to give up when needed. Again, not that scary an abnormality. If you leave it alone, it just wants you to chase it, and then it fights you. Alright, so that bird is kind of separate, I think, to the bird trilogy. So let's go over the bird trilogy. We'll start with Annoying Bird. Punishing Bird, whatever. Annoying Bird is a better name for it. A little confident bird that punishes the weak, the sinners, and other profane ones. Some employees stated that it looks fairly cute after seeing its small wings flapping. People have been committing sins for a long time. Why do they commit such a thing? Even when they know that it is bad, the little bird wondered. It must be because they don't have someone who punishes bad people. Foul things will never happen if I take that role myself. The little bird moved out of the forest it had been living for its lifetime, and never went back. So we've had that guy for ages. And then eventually we picked up Tall Bird, or the Bird of Judgment. It's a bird that carries around an unfair scale and judges the living in a dark forest. The scale always tilts in the same direction, but it doesn't know this because its eyes are covered. Or it knows and just ignores it. A long time ago, the bird was once a fair judge. Its scale tilted according to the sins committed. Bird of Judgment made a scale that was capable of weighing any sin to protect the forest. In the past, its eyes could see through everything. Its eyes were always shining like stars in the night sky. But it gave its eyes to Big Bird in order to save the forest. Now its eye sockets are hollow. The bandage flutters in the wind, as if it would rip off at any second. The bird's face was covered in gleaming feathers, once covered in gleaming feathers, but now they are all gone. All that remains is the unfair scale. Bird of Judgment continues on with the judgment. So this one used to have eyes and feathers, but it gave them all up. It also used to have a fair scale, but now it's not fair. And finally, but not finally, Big Bird. Our newest addition, we're still building up some of its gear, I believe. It is a bird with many eyes, wandering dark forests with a lamp that never falls dark. Should say dim, probably. The creatures will stare intently, and then bite the head off anyone, no matter how young or old it encounters. Instead of wings like a regular bird, the creature has long arms with which it can pick stuff up. A small bird that looks like an eyeball always follows the creature around. There is a tale of a beast that lays in deep, dark, empty forests that lures creatures. To protect all creatures from this large beast, Big Bird made a wick with all of its feathers. With that wick, it made a lamp that would burn forever. With the eternally lit lamp, it wandered the forest, warning creatures not to go deep into the forest. Thanks to the Big Bird, the number of creatures that were attacked decreased. But still, the Big Bird felt bad for the creatures that died at the hands of the beast. Big Bird had a thought. If I kill creatures first, they wouldn't be killed by the monster. After that, rumors flew around about a monster that would bite your head off. It is said that the monster stares victims carefully to see if they are the beast that lures creatures. This tale is from a town in somewhere. It's an old folk tale from the town. It was told by the town's oldest inhabitant, redacted. Although there is a general assumption that the tale was told to prevent kids from going to the forest, it's uncertain who started the tale. The tale was not a lie. We found the Big Bird in the forest after all, and afterwards we looked for the beast that lures humans. We looked in every nook and every corner. A month later we concluded there was no such thing as the beast, other than the Big Bird. That was the, I believe that was the the box selection quote for this thing. So I'll talk about that when we get to the end. But yeah, I think you might be able to figure out the plot here. The abnormality is certainly unaware of concept of death. Abnormalities in this company can be categorized into two. First, creatures that know what death is very well and will attack to kill. And second, creatures that are aware of the concept of death, but do not have ill will in an attack. This abnormality is neither. It's a third category. To this creature, death in itself is salvation. Great. If the creature ripped the head off a lost little girl in the forest, it did not commit murder. It saved the girl from a monster. We can't do anything when the creature has its eyes opened. It stares intently. When it continues to stare, something happens. So first, we need to put it to sleep. When all the eyes fall asleep, we can start our work. So, we got 3 birds. They all lived in a forest. Big Bird was trying to save people from a monster that didn't exist, and it ate people to save them from the monster. And it appears his 2 bird friends helped him in his endeavor, and then they left the forest. Also, the forest might be connected to the river that we draw things from down in the extraction department. That's still a little bit of a mystery. And seeing as they gave it to us, this was not anything that I did in game. This just shows up as soon as you've researched the other birds. I will show you Apocalypse Bird, although you might notice that this is not anywhere in our base yet. But knowing this information will be useful. So, it comes fully researched. The big eyes contain the light. The long arm hid the time. The small beak whispered endlessly. As long as they exist, Apocalypse Bird will not disappear. It is completely immune to all damage, but it has some pretty cool weapons and armor. I don't think these kind of stats make any difference at all, but you'll see. Abnormality information. A bird that is known to come when the world is filled with sins. Many employees fear the advent of this bird. If we want to talk about this bird, we must tell the story of the Black Forest first. We must not forget the forest once so beautiful and peaceful. And apocalypse shall come after that. Tales from the Black Forest lands. A long time ago, in a warm and dense forest, lived 3 happy birds. The birds had no names, but creatures in the forest called them Big Bird, Long Bird, and Little Bird. Everyone lived freely and happily together in the forest, in peace. The birds wanted the forest to be safe more than anyone, so creatures from the outside could come to visit and have fun. It was a warm, sunny afternoon when a stranger visited the peaceful forest. He was a traveler, pioneer, and prophet, but at the same time, he was nothing. He wanted to come into the forest, but the birds didn't let him because they found him suspicious. The stranger, angered, told the birds as he left, "Tragedy will come to this forest soon. It will be tainted with sins and evil, and fighting will never stop. The tragedy will stop once a terrible monster devours everything. The sun and moon will shine upon you no longer. The forest will never go back to what it was before." One thing to note here. He was nothing. I kind of get the feeling that this isn't any specific individual, but rather the birds thinking or hallucinating or something along those lines. Anyway, the birds became worried because of the prophecy. What if the fighting never stops? Or a terrible monster devours everything, as he says? The birds decided to become sentinels of the forest. They loved this forest, so they wanted to protect the creatures living in it, and keep the peace. Big Bird, with his many eyes, watched over the forest to seek trespassers. Big Bird's eyes can see very far, and things we can't see. Then someone said, "But what should we do if the monster comes in at night when everyone is asleep?" Big Bird became worried, so he burned all of his feathers to make an everlasting lantern. Now creatures in the forest were under Big Bird's watch night and day. Longbird weighed the sins of creatures that entered the forest to keep peace. Longbird's scales could measure every sin and were fair and just. Then someone said, "But what should we do if the scales don't tip to any direction?" Longbird became worried, so he made the scales tip to only one direction so that he can get the result under any situation. The result is death. Little Bird decided to punish bad creatures with his beak. Then someone said, "But your beak is so small." Fella said this. That was Fella. "But your beak is so small, no one would find it painful." Little Bird became worried, so he split his mouth open to make it big enough to devour any creature in one bite. This is a big one. No one wanted to visit the forest anymore. Bad rumors about the forest started to spread outside. Whoever enters that forest ends up in a terrible situation. No creature is free because Big Bird is watching them all the time. Long Bird's scales are not fair at all, and Little Bird's punishment is scary. The birds were angry. Why would they spread rumors like that when they were working so hard to protect the forest? Fewer and fewer visitors came to the forest. Creatures were complaining. Fights broke out daily, and the birds worked even harder to make the forest peaceful. This forest is too big and wide to protect with only the three of us. But there is no creature who can protect the forest but us. If we merge our strengths together, we might become stronger. The day when Big Bird's eyes that can see hundreds of kilometers away, Long Bird who can judge any sin, and Little Bird's mouth who can devour any creature merged together, the darkness fell upon the forest. Creatures screamed in fear at the sight of the bird. The forest fell into chaos. In chaotic cries of fear, someone shouted, "It's the monster! Big, terrible monster lives in the forest! The black, dark forest!" Monster? The three birds, now as one, looked around to find the monster, but couldn't find it. The birds started looking for the monster, wandering the forest. It's dangerous if the monster is here. But there was nothing. There was no creature, no sun and moon, and no monster. All that is left is just a bird and the black forest. Only cold, dark night continued from then. Rumors say there is a terrible monster in the Black Forest where no one lives. One last section. Survivor testimony. Every single light in the facility went crazy. They kept going on and off. I couldn't even use a lighter. Then warm light shone through. It looked like a waning twilight or rising morning sun. But as we all know, sunlight can't come into the facility. We silently gazed at the light. A sudden darkness and weird gleam of light were enough reason to be frightened. It was scarier than any gory scene we saw. It was fear of unknown itself. Omitted. Something was coming from afar. Incandescent lights like stars in space were walking towards us. They looked like Big Bird's eyes, but it was not him. I heard long arms scratching along the floor. Someone whispered, "There's someone who couldn't run away." There was an employee kneeling on the floor, as if he couldn't sense the thing approaching from behind. He couldn't scream. He was just meaninglessly struggling to move his legs. There was no heroic act of another employee against the monster, or even a scream that tells him to watch out. Everyone just looked at him, expecting the terrible thing that was about to happen. Every step sent tremors through the facility. The monster was walking at a very slow pace, but it seemed so fast. It devoured the employee in one bite, and in that instant, everyone started screaming in chaos. I succeeded in numerous suppressions, but that day, for the first time, I regret joining the company. I was sure that I wouldn't get out alive. The helplessness overwhelmed me. I couldn't even think about suppressing the monster. I think I'm the only one who is intact enough to write among the survivors. The company will never tell new employees about the presence, but I want to warn them. That's why I'm writing. So I wonder if we should see this thing today. We'll see what happens. Anyway, for the future tubers, that is your story time. We have caught up on all the lore. There will of course be more to go, but for now we are caught up, and I will see you next episode. As far as the Big Bird apocalypse story, yes, I would agree that it is quite sad. There is still more to it that we haven't completely resolved, I believe. But, yeah, that's definitely one of the better long-form stories with multiple sections. Like, that was a good one. The grammar wasn't perfect, but that was one of the more well-done stories. We'll deal with Apocalypse Bird shortly, though. Anyway, future tubers, stay tuned. Next episode, new day, new management.